Hey there, guys. This is Brandon with the Gearist Podcast, episode number 3, and today we are joined by Tony Post, the CEO and founder of Topo Athletic out of Newton, Massachusetts. Very, very excited. If you're not familiar with Topo Athletic, I suggest you go to topoathletic.com. Check out their shoes. They've got a new line of shoes, a couple new lines of shoes coming out, the Run Venture and the Fli-lite, that we're going to talk about a little bit today. But we're also going to talk again about the origins of the company, where it came from, where Tony came from, and some of his life experience. So, Tony, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So you and I got a chance to meet a while ago, actually, downtown Boulder at Amante. Me, you, and Georgia, your marketing manager. It was really cool to get into not only seeing the product, okay, but one of the things that struck me about talking to you is that you're a guy coming at a product not from, hey, you know, I think I can build a better shoe. I'm not saying that's not where you're coming from. But you're coming at it from my perception anyways, you're coming at it from the aspect of going, look, I think I can build a better shoe, but here's why. From a I want to have a happy runner standpoint, or we want people to be healthy standpoint. So when you came to found Topo, coming from Vibram, and we can talk a little bit about that and everything, but when you came to found Topo as a company, what were the objectives, what were the goals when you set out to do that?
Yeah, so I've been in the footwear industry for about 30 years, but I've been a runner for even longer. So the first thought was it was really exciting for me to be able to make shoes for a sport that I love. And so I wanted to make shoes for running and for functional fitness training. And obviously my experience is a little more informed by probably the last 10 or 15 years. We always made shoes that were really comfortable. Prior to being CEO of Vibram, I was with the Rockport company and ran all product and marketing there. And those shoes, you know, whether you like Rockports or not, they're very, very comfortable. So I was kind of trained in the idea of creating shoes that are really comfortable and that are functional and work very well. And with Topo, I wanted to create athletic shoes that had a more ergonomic design, I guess would be the best way for me to say it. So I wanted the body to be able to move and work in a more natural way. I love shoes that have room for your toes to spread and splay, but sometimes a shoe that fits like that can be sloppy on the foot or feel disconnected. So I wanted a shoe that gave you that sensation but felt more connected to your body. I wanted a platform that would be light and responsive, but at the same time not put you in any kind of an artificial position. So I like a more neutral platform, not a lot of heel-to-toe drop. Sometimes some of our shoes have a little bit of heel-to-toe drop, but we don't like very much. And we like the platform to work and move in a natural way with your body. And then third, and this really does go back all the way to my Rockport days, is I love shoes that are exceptionally lightweight. So all of our men's shoes weigh less than 9 ounces. All of the women's shoes weigh less than 8 ounces. Running shoes aren't heavy by nature anyway, but all of our shoes are exceptionally lightweight. And the way those three characteristics come together, the shape, the platform, the weight, really define ergonomic design for us.
Gotcha. Wow. So going back to Rockport and going back kind of in your past, what was the most important thing that you personally learned at those companies? I mean, were you coming at it like when you got to Rockport, let's say, were you coming in there going, hey, I'm going to work for a shoe company? Or were you coming in there going, hey, I'm a runner who's going to work for a company?
Yeah, I came at it from the point of view of a runner, honestly, who was just trying to make shoes that made people feel good. You know, back then, it's hard to believe it, but back then casual shoes were kind of heavy and clumpy and weren't very comfortable. And so, you know, I was trying to solve some of those problems. And today, when we started Topo, it's really the challenge is the same. You know, as a runner and somebody who's really close to the experience, or as a fitness enthusiast and somebody who's close to that experience, I wanted shoes that help deliver a better experience. And for me, a better experience is one that allows my body to move or work in a more natural way.
So leaving Rockport and going into your next adventure, if you will, at Vibram, you know, that whole entire Vibram is now in the running circle is very well known for Vibram 5 fingers, and whether people, it's a very guttural reaction, people love them or hate them or whatever. But in that experience, and since you were kind of at the helm during that development of that product, did that turn around and inform the way that you you wanted to go with Topo. As you said at the outset, the 3 points that you wanted to really make sure were ergonomically taken care of. Was Vibram, your experience at Vibram, the 5 fingers and all that, informing that with Topo, or was this something that these were previously held beliefs?
Yeah, I think that probably up until 10 or 15 years ago, the running industry made a lot of the same types of products, and 5 fingers were the first product that kind of got people to think about things differently. You're right, whether you love it or hate it, it got people to open their mind around other ideas and other possibilities. For me, what I learned from that whole experience was I was really fond of a more natural running style. I liked products that allowed my body to move and work in a more natural way. I loved a fit that allowed my toes to spread. For the first 15 or 20 years of my running experience, we wore shoes oftentimes that were probably too small, especially, racing when you're doing track racing and that kind of stuff. We had shoes that, really pushed our toes together. Yeah. So it was kind of a liberating experience to discover products that allowed your feet and your body to move and work in a more natural way and feel great. And so I'm definitely informed in my experiences of the last 10 years as what we create today.
Yeah. So when you started out with Topo, when you founded Topo, I say started out with like you just kind of came on, even though the company it's yours. When you started Topo, when you founded Topo, the first shoes that you guys came out with were tabby style shoes. And for those who don't know, I don't have one here with me, but that means that the great toe, the big toe, is articulated and separated from the rest of the toes. And then that kind of phased out to a large degree. But why did you choose to go down the tabby road? I mean, there's a lot of certainly hundreds of years of history of that in Asia. Well, why did you decide to bring that to a more modern shoe?
Yeah, I really love the concept. I still really like the concept. I like the idea of isolating the big toe and allowing that big toe to be used more independently as a stabilizer for balance, agility, a sense of control. So I thought there were a lot of positive things to that idea, but I'm also a person who's really close to the marketplace, and I could see that, for a lot of people, it just wasn't going to work. They just either they didn't like it, they didn't like the look of it, aesthetically it wasn't pleasing to them, or some people were worried about, well, that means I have to have special socks, and I have to keep track of the left and right sock, and I always have to have the socks with me if I take the shoes when I'm traveling. So there were just a lot of barriers to entry, frankly. Right. When we introduced the closed-toe shoes in our line, we actually kept a lot of the same ingredients. You mentioned the Run Venture. This is the Run Venture, which is a new trail running shoe. But actually, if you look closely at the Run Venture, and you can see on the bottom of the shoe here, we used some of the same tooling that was used in the original split toe shoes. And so the last shape, in other words, the shape that fits your foot, a lot of the tooling and equipment, those were things that people liked. Some of those things, they just weren't crazy about the split toe. So we used and leveraged a lot of that that we started with in the creation of some of the newer products.
Yeah, the first Topo shoe that I ever ran in was the RR. And I have to say the most fascinating thing about it is that when you get in now this is for those who aren't familiar with the RR, feel free to Google it, or we can put a link somewhere over by my head over here when you guys watch the video. The RR is a racing flat, and please correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, and it uses boa enclosure. And what fascinated me was that, as you said, the big toe being separated as a stability feature. I have a very average foot, probably a little high on the arch side. I'm a supinator. I only run in neutral shoes. And I took this thing out for the first few times on the road, and every single time I was absolutely astounded at how that big toe engages. And I'm curious, because I've always been curious. I don't think I've had the chance to ask you this question before. Have you had people that traditionally run in quote fingers stability shoes run in one of the split-toed shoes and then all of a sudden find that pretty much all that pronation or whatever else they're trying to prevent by running in an overbuilt stability shoe goes away? Because again, that separated great toe, it's astounding how much it props up the rest of the foot.
Yeah, I think it's I like the experience, and I think a lot of people like it, but it's certainly not for everybody.
Right.
And so we can appreciate that. And it might not be for everybody. It might not even be for the people who like it. It might not be for them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a person who really believes in changing up your shoes. Trying different stack heights depending on what kind of training you're doing. I like certain characteristics of fit, but I don't think it's a bad thing to have different stack heights in your shoes depending on what kind of a run you're going on.
Sure. So when you moved into the closed-toed shoes, I think the first closed-toed model that I tried was the MT, hybrid mountain training shoe, hence the MT in that. Loved it. Fantastic shoe. Nice and flexy. There's no rock plate in that, if I'm not mistaken, or was
Correct.
there?
Yep. Yeah. No, there is not.
But in the Run Venture, which you just showed a second ago, and I have it right here also, in the Run Venture, you do have a full-length rock plate, if I'm not mistaken, or at least that's what it cosmetically.
Yeah, I can show you here what that plate looks like. So I've got it. You can see this is the midsole of the shoe that you were just holding up. This is in a different color, obviously, but and you can see this is like a TPU plate that's molded in. We mold it in, and then we leave the mid part open here so that you can have a little bit of torsional flex.
Gotcha.
I like to have the plating protection so that it prevents, the feeling of rocks or stones x-raying up through the sole. But I don't want to make the shoe so rigid that it doesn't have a little bit of torsional flex and allow the foot to move naturally. Right. It also has flex groove up in the forefoot, which, of course, matches the flex groove in the rubber outsole,
right?
And that allows it to flex really easily, which in a trail shoe, of course, is super important for going uphill. You don't want any additional resistance. So this provides good plating protection underneath the foot, but it also gives a little more structural integrity. So if you're on a very rugged surface or really rugged trails, it just gives you a little more structural integrity that you might need, as you're running along, especially as you get tired.
In terms of resistance, from, let's say there was that version, what am I trying to say here? Let's say there's the version of a Run Venture sans rock plate, and then there's a version of the Run Venture with rock plate. What, in just kind of abstract percentage, would you say is the sacrifice in flexibility? So this is a question that somebody actually asked. They said the Run Venture's rock plate versus flexibility. And it seems like, not to cut you off, your answer off, but ask you a question then answer it myself. It looks like, because you guys have articulated it into those very distinct sections, that it wouldn't be very much. Is that the case?
Yeah, I mean, we tried to allow it to move and flex quite a bit. Having the openings in the flex plate are important because they're in key spots that really allow the foot to flex a little bit more where it would flex naturally. But if you're on a very rugged trail, and those of us who've run on super rugged trails know, if you're in a sole, it's nice to have a thin sole that you've got some response because your body's reacting to the ground, and it helps you to find balance and be more agile or nimble as you're moving through the rocks. But at the same time, you can't be perfect, and so it's not bad to have a little bit of plating protection for when you do step on a rock or a stone, that it can kind of dull that so it doesn't, give you a stone bruise or some kind of an injury problem.
Right. So you mentioned running on rough trails, and as you mentioned before you started recording, you grew up around here, kind of in Colorado.
That's right. I grew up in Golden, Colorado.
There you go, right down the road. And so, as such, I personally have found that trail running is, not that I have experience with the latter, but trail running is a lot like crack in that it's so crazy addicting. Like, I did Ironman Chattanooga last year, and in my training for that, I'm going out and doing my runs, and then I was like, okay, well, on this slower recovery day, I'm going to run on trails. And the problem with that is that you can't stop running on trails once you start. It's so addicting. So yeah. What's your favorite kind of run? If you've got 2 hours, you're going to go out and you're just going to kind of cruise somewhere. What's that going to look like?
Well, I love trail running, and if it was convenient to be able to do it all the time, I probably would do it most of the time because I really do love I like being in nature. I've done a lot of runs around, you mentioned like North Table and South Table Mountain right there in Golden, Colorado. Those are some great trails all through that area. Where we are here, our office is in Newton, Massachusetts. We're about maybe a mile and a half from the top of Heartbreak Hill. We have some great trails, but they're more paved trails around here. Also in nature, but so I just take it where I can get it and appreciate the variety. You know, that's the great thing about running for all of us is you can do it anywhere, just about anywhere in the world, it seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. Just toss on a pair of shoes, maybe in some people's cases, not even a shirt. Just go run.
Yeah.
I love that. So your background as a runner, can you tell us about that a little bit? Coming into, I mean, into the 30 years in the running industry, it's kind of fortuitous that you wound up here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I discovered running a little late. I actually didn't run in high school. I mean, I ran for fitness and for other sports, but I didn't run competitively in high school. And then when I got to college, I was on a different athletic scholarship, and my roommate was a runner, and he got me into running, and so he got me pretty fit and healthy, and I ran an intramural meet, and that's how I ended up getting started in running. And I ended up, winning a mile and a 2 mile, and then I went to some AAU meets and was kind of hooked on the idea. It's like a lot of us, if you find a sport that you have a little bit of success in early on, that kind of encourages you to keep going. And so I did well enough, in those early years that pretty soon I actually was able to walk on to the track team at University of Tulsa. And so I ran the 5K at Tulsa. I ended up being more of a 5,000 meter guy. Ran a 14:24 when I was in college and after. And then that was about, as fast as I ever went. So I wasn't like a super fast or, high caliber runner, but I was pretty competitive, could run a 30-minute 10K, 30:02 for a PRN 10K, 24:15 for 5 miles, that kind of stuff.
Wow. Well done. Well, so for quote, not that fast, you just blew out like 99% of the people that will ever hear this. So
no, I don't, to me, it's not about that. It's about getting outside. And, I'm just saying I didn't want to come across like I'm a professional runner, because I wasn't.
Of course not. So what were you wearing back then? Like, if you have to go out now, when you're doing 5,000 meters, you're wearing like a flat or a spike or something like that. But when you're going out for your longer runs, what were you wearing back then?
Yeah, I mean, these are the early days. There were a few different brands. Obviously, Nike was, already, even in the late 70s and early 80s, kind of a popular brand. They introduced a product called the Tailwind. That was a popular shoe for a lot of us who were distance running back in those days. But they were a lot of, the early traditional running shoes that we look at as traditional today. Of course, back then, these were really breakthrough products. Were what I enjoyed. So one of the things that was interesting about those shoes back in those days too was that a lot of the shoes that we wore didn't have a lot of cushioning or protection or a lot of heel to toe drop. So that kind of came a little bit later. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I didn't realize it at the time. We thought that more cushioning and more stack height under the heel was a good thing, but as soon as I tried running in more minimal footwear again, it really harkened back to those feelings that I had before and made me more conscious of my running form, my body mechanics, a lot of things that, probably I'd gotten lazy about over the previous years.
So, in speaking of form and the biomechanics of form, was it your own experience that kind of led you down? Again, I keep harkening back on this ergonomic road because I think it's so integral to Topo. Was it your own experience that kind of informed a lot of that, or do you have somebody who is kind of a scientific, I don't want to say mentor, maybe, like, Dan Lieberman is right down the road from you. When you were at, Vibram, the whole entire kind of Born to Run thing came out, and Chris and all the guys that he talked there. Was there somebody, or was it your own experience that kind of informed that passion, I guess, that you have now that caused you to create and found Topo?
Yeah, I think it was mostly my own experience. I've known Dan for, as you said, quite a few years now, and he's a terrific guy, and he helps me to understand a lot of things that I feel that I don't necessarily understand the science part of it, and I still consider him a friend and somebody who's really helpful in explaining things. But I think a lot of it comes from my own experience. I mean, I love the sensation of fit that I talked about before.
Right.
But I also realized that I probably, and some people can, but I couldn't run or train as hard as I wanted in a shoe that was a super, super thin sole. I needed to have just a little more protection underfoot. And I knew there were people of all different degrees. And so when we created Topo, in some cases I wanted to have a little more stack height for people who felt like they needed a little more protection. But I also wanted to have some shoes that were a little thinner and maybe a little less stack height. This is a new shoe that we have coming in the spring that is a very minimal shoe. It's about 14 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot and in the rear. It's a zero drop shoe. What makes it so minimal is also in the upper. It's completely, and I don't know if you can see this, but
oh yeah,
it's completely transparent all through the upper, and it's just a really super lightweight, breathable, very strong mesh that we found and have applied to this new application. And so this is a shoe that weighs only about maybe 6.5 ounces on the foot.
Well done.
But it's just a terrific sensation. So we make shoes from that to something that obviously has a little more stack height. Another new shoe that we have coming out that has just a little more thickness, a little more cushioning and protection, but still enough flexibility underfoot and lightweight mesh in our fit and last that it allows the foot to move in a very natural way.
And it's in Patriots colors.
I
can't stand the Patriots.
The snow this year on the ground. Give us the Super Bowl at least.
There you go. You can have this one. You should send a thank you note to Pete Carroll. So talking about stack and that kind of thing. Somebody asked, because we put out a little a notice beforehand saying, does anybody have any questions for you? One of the questions that came up a couple times actually is well, first let me back up to the minimalist movement, if you will. The minimalist movement is one of those things that kind of came charging in, this is my perception, came charging in and then has since very much plateaued, to a large degree in terms of its kind of impact, because it used to be, 5 years ago that it was so new. Now it's not new. It's just kind of part of the landscape. And that's not to diminish its impact. It's still certainly present, and it's present as it's ever been. It's just not as kind of like out there because it's not new and all that kind of stuff. But in the past, what has it been? 4 years, 3-4 years? This is when the maximalist movement has come about, and everybody has, even zero drop shoes. Ultra has the Olympus, I think is the name of the shoe. This is a zero drop shoe, with what, 18 inches or so of stack height. So I'm wondering, where does, my personal kind of bent would be to not go down that road. I like that ground feel. I really love to be able to sense the ground, as you've touched on several times. So what do you think about the whole maximalist movement? Not particularly, I'm not saying knock another brand or anything like that, but just where does your brain kind of jog in that realm?
Yeah, I mean, people like different things. So,
yeah.
And for a lot of people, I know that's something that works probably pretty well for them. But I'd say there are two things. One is just what you said. You took my words already, which is that I like shoes that give you a little bit of feedback.
Yep.
I like shoes that tell me where the ground is. I don't want to insulate my body from my environment or from the experience. So I think that I run my best, I have my best form when I know where the ground is. And so that doesn't mean that I have to be in a super thin shoe. It just means that I have to get a little bit of feedback.
Right.
So that's one thing. And the second thing is, I don't think there's any, magic thing to the shoe necessarily. I think it's important to have a shoe that fits well, that works well, that allows you to train to your maximum potential. So whatever that might be, that's probably the best shoe for you. Try to find a shoe that fits well. Try to find a shoe that works for your body mechanics and your running style. That's probably what's most important. For me personally, though, I do like a shoe that allows me to get feedback from my environment.
Right. And so, just because you from what you said, everything you said so far, you're so just like innately involved in the development of the brand of Topo. But how involved are you these days in the product development? Like, are you getting down and dirty? You have the X-Acto knife and cutting out patterns and like, making cuts on a mold or something here or there. What are you up to these days with regard to product development?
Well, so, I've been making product or been involved in product for 30 years in footwear products. And so, and we're a small company. So everybody plays a huge role in a small company. People who've worked in small companies know that, number one, nobody does this alone. It takes a team of people to make anything happen and to do it well. And everybody has to, wear multiple hats along the way. But I love product. Product is really where my heart is. It's still, and because it's a sport that I love, both running and fitness training are things that I really love and appreciate, and being outdoors, trail running is another thing that I love. It's easy for me to want to work on these kinds of products. I love talking to consumers. I love identifying where the problems are, the challenges, how we can improve the experience. Mm-hmm. Anybody who makes a product or a consumer product, anybody who does that is really trying to figure out a way that they can make a better experience for somebody else. And that's the reward when somebody comes back and says, wow, your shoe fits my foot so well, or I love the breathability that you have in those shoes, or I feel like I'm stronger or more resistant to injury because I've been using your types of products. So those are the things that make this a rewarding job. So I'm in it because I love doing that, and that naturally puts you close to the product.
Right. I love that. That's such a great answer. And it's good to see that kind of this very much top-down, getting down and dirty with everything approach. And as you said, being in a small company, you kind of have to by necessity. But I bet you if 10 years from now, Topo's got 300 employees, you're still going to be sitting there designing shoes.
I hope so. I mean, Rockport at the time, it was a larger company and part of Reebok, but I was still really hands-on with the products that we created. So I love that process.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you mentioned fitness training. You've actually mentioned this a couple of times. And if I'm not mistaken, I follow Topo. Gearist follows Topo on Instagram. And I think maybe you also. So there's been some CrossFit pictures sneaking out there of you in the, what do they call that? The box, right? In the CrossFit box. Was it, well, first, tell me about your personal involvement in fitness training versus just running.
So what I would say what I do, I mean, I've done CrossFit classes, but we have a couple people here that are great at CrossFit. So it would be far from me to ever talk about,
Sure.
being a person who really does CrossFit. I probably would qualify my functional fitness training as more as circuit training is what I would say. So it's a combination of, a bunch of different exercises while I'm also mixing in some cycling, running, rowing, things like that. So what I'm trying to do is to do good functional body training, core strength work, and I think that's helped my balance, mobility, agility, all of those things that probably make running a more relaxed experience for me. And it also makes me, hopefully, a better skier, a better cyclist. Topo is very much involved in running shoes, but we're also about, athletes. Running and functional fitness are two things that almost every athlete has to do if they want to enjoy their sport. So even if you're not a runner per se, or even if you're not a CrossFit athlete per se, that type of training is so vital to, enjoying mountain biking or enjoying skiing or snowboarding. So that's why, we feel like our brand has the potential to appeal to a much wider audience. We don't think of ourselves as only a running brand.
Certainly.
We think of ourselves as a great athletic footwear brand for athletes.
And so getting into the fitness training back in like the advent of Topo, was this a very conscious decision that you guys made from the outset, or was this something that it just happened that fitness athletes, CrossFitters or whatever are using Topo because of the articulated toe thing or the low drop thing or what have you? Was it the chicken or the egg, I guess?
Yeah, I know. For us, we knew we wanted to be, that was an important part of the mix. So it didn't come about by accident. We knew we wanted to create functional fitness shoes. We have 10 models of shoes. Mm-hmm. And out of the 10, we make 5 for road running, 3 for trail running, and 2 for functional fitness. And that's probably kind of about how the balance of our lives is, you know. I mean, because of where we are, we're on the road a lot. We're road running, and then when we can, we get out into nature, into the mountains, into the trails. But you know, that's not often enough. And right now, it's been more snowshoeing for us. And then you know, we're in the gym at least 2 or 3 days a week. And I used to do the gym just because I felt like I had to do the gym, but I've also grown to really enjoy that experience. And it's a different experience. You know, it can be a really social experience. Sure. Oftentimes that's something that you're doing in a group, and people encourage each other and challenge each other. And that's part of what makes that a fun experience. It's not just for the pure gutting it out of the, you know, getting the workout.
Now, is there, and this kind of leads my brain to think about things like OCR, obstacle course racing. Is there, or are there, would be the correct grammar with that, are there any designs that you guys have on making something that's maybe a cross-country shoe? I mean, every shoe company tosses around the idea of a spike, right, to some degree, whatever that means for you, you know. But are you guys looking at that at all? Because, I mean, that's a place where there's a ton of crossover. Look, you're running through fire and over barbed wire and stuff, but you're running, you know, getting down in the mud and all this kind of stuff. And there are shoes that are specially made for that kind of a, you know, a cross-country spike or spike. Are you guys looking at that at all? And I don't want to ask you to give away anything that you're not comfortable with, of course.
Yeah, I think we have to get really good at the products that we're making today. Good. But I would say all of those possibilities are on the table because, you know, as your company grows and you're more in a position to apply resources to things where you see there's an opportunity to improve the experience again, to deliver a product that solves a problem or makes that, you know, a more fun sport to do, you should take advantage of it. So. Yeah. But I think for us, just because we're small, because we're still getting started, you know, we have to stay pretty focused on just what we're doing.
I like that. I like that decision. There's, you know, now that I kind of hear you say that, it's quite often that you see a brand expand out too quickly into something rather than paying attention to their core, their base, where that came from. And because at the same time as you're kind of separating your core product, you're also separating your core audience to a large degree and hoping to make headway into a different realm. So in terms of races and things like that, in the past for you, whether it's, you know, after Topo is founded or not, just prior to today, what's your favorite race that you've done? Whether it's 10K, 5K, marathon, half marathon, whatever that is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have a favorite. I've been involved in a lot of different types of races. So, you know, from running in college as a NCAA track athlete, that's one kind of experience, and it's fun, and I enjoyed that. About 20 years ago, I was involved in the Leadville Trail 100 as, you know, somebody who was helping to sponsor that event and try and get ultra, you know, a little bit more up and off the ground. And gosh, I had such admiration for the people that were participating in that. You know, I mean, I would each day when the, you know, finish line, you know, when you stand at the finish line, watch people come across, you have tears coming down your eyes. So, you know, that's just always been such a great emotional experience too. Obviously, we live in Boston, so we have a special place in our heart for the marathon. Right. You know, and we're coming up now on a special time of year when you know, we'll have a few people here in the office that'll run the marathon, and then almost everybody will be, you know, closely involved with it. So, you know, it almost doesn't matter to me. I think, you know, there's something to be found that can be really special in all of those.
When you were watching Leadville, did you ever have that moment where you go, man, I'd love to do that? Or did your brain go, hey, don't say that out loud. It's 100 miles above 10,000 feet.
Well, I was lucky. I actually was a pacer a couple times, so it's a fun way to experience Leadville. And I used to like to pace people over, for people who are familiar with the race course. I used to like to pace people up over Hope Pass in that section, which is a really beautiful section with big elevation gain and great views. And it's the most fun part of the race. So on a good day, I'd get to pace a couple of people, and you know, you'd still get in probably 30 miles or something on a day like that. So it was fun to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. So with the Boston Marathon and people, let's talk about people at Topo, people aside from yourself that are at Topo, the team that you've assembled there. Is it like on the application, does it say, are you a runner? Check yes, or just leave now? Is that
No, I mean, not at all. And, we have people that are, I think people do gravitate toward companies that are, have something that they're interested in. So if you're interested in, I don't know, art, you probably, maybe you go to work for a company that does, glasses or pottery or something like
Sure.
that. And I think so most of the people who work here are interested in athletics. There are several of us that are runners, but as I mentioned before, we have a couple folks that are CrossFit athletes.
Right.
We have a person that's former NCAA cross-country skier. We've got a couple rowers on the staff, people who rowed in college too. So I'd say probably more endurance type athletes.
Sure.
It's probably what our makeup is here.
Gotcha.
But it's definitely part of the DNA, and it puts us all closer to the consumer, and all of us can then relate to the consumer experience a little bit more. And I think that is important. If you're going to make good products that improve the quality of the experience at every level in the company, whether it's your finance person or customer service or the person who's creating products, if they have that understanding of the consumer experience, it makes us a smarter company.
Yeah, and it makes that overriding passion really shows through. I mean, if you could even take a portion of the passion that you have from it and kind of extrapolate that out to the rest of your company, you got kind of a winning formula there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
So being that you guys have gotten, what are you standing at now, like 7 million inches of snow or something so far this year?
We have I think we've had 8 feet in a month, somebody said, something like that. And we have about 4 feet on the ground.
That's all. So when you're going out and stuff like that, correct me if I'm wrong, Topo doesn't have yet a GoreTexy type option. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Do you
We don't have a waterproof option, which would have been nice this year.
That's what I was going to say. Are you looking at that?
Yes, we are.
Future? Yeah.
I wish we could have made it. No, I mean, I first of all, for running outdoors in this kind of weather, it's been so cold, that even thermal protection or thermal insulation is a consideration. And but once you're into it, after the first 10 or 15 minutes, usually you're fine. But it's nice to have some options. It would be nice to have some other products. And as I said, we're a small company, and we've got to stay focused. But we're definitely looking at other options for other types of weather.
So have you been running in this just where you can on the kind of little path?
I mean, all of us are running. I don't hate it, but I don't like necessarily running on the treadmill, but sometimes I've been running on the treadmill. I've done a lot of snowshoeing this year, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of cross-country skiing. So honestly, I look at those as great alternatives. It's a great thing to be able to do that. And I think the main thing is if you get outside, and I look at it as another form of cross-training. So it's not always convenient to run. You shouldn't. Maybe that's nature's way of telling you try to pick up something else. Try snowshoeing, try cross-country skiing. So we've been doing more of that this year, and it's fun.
Good. That's awesome. I went for a great snowshoe up here in the Front Range the other day. Was going through like 4 feet of snow. It was excellent. So one of the things that I loved, and I'm going to hold up the Run Venture so everybody can see this, and I think that the first shoe that you guys had this on was the MT, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but was using 3D printing as a structure of your uppers. What was it, the MT that was the first shoe you guys implemented that way?
Yeah, the MT was the second, so you're really close. The ST was actually the first shoe that we did that, which was a shoe that's still in our line, that's still pretty popular. It's a very lightweight speed training shoe. That's why it's called the ST. Yeah.
Right. And I think that is so cool. Now, did somebody present that to you guys? They were like, hey, here's this cool technology, because, up to now and still currently, most of the overlays, they're just kind of bonded, heat bonded or welded or sonically welded or whatever. But this stuff is everybody's 3D printing. You just 3D print the whole shoe and call it a day.
Well, I don't want us to sound like we're that advanced, but I think we were one of the early companies, and to be doing that, to be printing our uppers rather than cutting and sewing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were nervous that, maybe it wouldn't hold together. Was it going to be strong enough? Those kinds of things. We did it for a couple of reasons. One, as a really small company, if you have to go out and buy materials, there are usually minimum buy requirements on those materials. And those buy requirements really limit your options. So we were looking for ways around that. That was one. Number two is we were also looking for shoes where we could create a lighter, more breathable sensation. And so we were looking at trying to have fewer layers on shoes. And the printing gave us some structure, some bones on the skeleton, if you will, some bones on the body, but it still allowed us to use super thin meshes where they kind of wrap the uppers, and the shoes would be very breathable, form to your foot, but still have some structure to them.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. I love it in all the models that I've tried because, yeah, I just love the 3D printing onto the shoe because it's so thin. And you're right, it leaves alone the mesh to be able to breathe, but still without compromising the structure. Particularly on the MT, and I haven't had this on the technical trails that I will have here in about a week or two when this snow kind of goes away. But on the MT, where you really want your foot to be able to breathe, and you're really putting the screws to a shoe like that if you're on technical trail. I mean,
yeah, the MT it's fine. I think MT I believe it's a little more suited towards softer trails, easier trails. If you're going on something a little more aggressive, so where you are in Colorado, for example, I was going to say, if you are running, South Table or the trails around there, or maybe up above Boulder in that area, I think the Run Venture, the shoe that you have, the one you were holding up, is really the right way to go. I think that shoe's a stronger, a little more rugged shoe. That platform that we talked about before really helps.
Yeah, I really like it a lot. So this is a question that I like to ask in these conversations because I think it's kind of indicative of being outside of the running industry or outside of whatever industry you're in, and that is what brand, and it doesn't have to be in the outdoor industry at all, but what brand inspires you by what they're doing in their messaging, maybe by what they're doing in their construction, their ethos, whatever that is. What brand inspires you?
There's a lot of great brands, and so because I've been in both the outdoor and the kind of the sporting goods or sportswear industry. Obviously, Patagonia, I think a lot of people would say, those of us who are in this industry, are inspired by that company. Yvon Chouinard was a climber. He wanted to make great products. He's still a user. I think that they've really evolved the company. It's changed a lot, but at the same time, the spirit of that company just feels so honest and genuine, and the products are, really functional products. The company is the right culture. It's a company that I think a lot of people would admire the more they know about it. There are lots of great companies of innovation in the outdoor industry. So many of the companies were started by individuals who just love the sport. And in running, probably some of that is true too. I think, you can't help but admire the work that Fli-lite did, to build a company the way he did. And it started because he had a passion for running and a passion for track and field. And that's kind of what founded the company. And he was able to take that passion and spread it to other people and expand into so many other types of sports. It's a great company.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good because, a lot of times when not necessarily these conversations, but when I ask people that questions, well, what brands do you look to? There's this tendency to kind of want to go to smaller brands because they're the kind of, they're having to take advantage of the grassroots thing. But it's, it's one of those things where you have to look at the big guys because the big guys got big by doing the right thing. They did something right along the way. And so I really appreciate that with, Nike being admired. I mean, Fli-lite, what was he selling shoes out of the trunk of his car at some point, right?
Yeah. I think the one people probably point to most now, and it's probably an overused example, but I still think it's a great example, is Apple.
Yeah.
Apple has done a great job of still delivering a product that's a really good premium product that's functional, works well. They haven't compromised who they are as it became, the largest company in the world. So it's something to be admired.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, That's great. I like that. By the way, Nike is re-releasing on February 28th the Cortez in old school Forrest Gump colors, like the white with the red and the blue.
Yeah, I sold a few of those when I was a youngster.
I like that. I love it.
In the shoe store.
The price tag has increased a little bit, but yeah, but they're still the same shoe apparently. So what's next for you personally? I mean, do you have any events on the schedule? It seems like you're not necessarily an event guy. You're kind of a guy that wants to just go out and do it, and not necessarily go sign up for the Boston Marathon, but maybe you go run a marathon on a weekend just because.
Well, if we do have, I'm going to tell your viewers or your listeners that if anybody's coming to Boston, we will be at the Boston Marathon Expo.
Nice.
And I would encourage them to come by, and they can try out the new Fli-lites we'll have there. We have a human-powered treadmill that we use at the expo, which is fun to run on. If you've never run on a human-powered treadmill before, it's a fun experience, and we'll coach you up on that. So that's a fun thing. That's a fun event to be at. It's so much a part of the city and the culture here. It's a big part of running. You meet people from all over the world. It's an exciting one. So we love events like that, and we're out there on events from that to we do a lot of things where we take a bag of 30 pair of demo shoes to a Tuesday night run club and let people try the shoes and give us feedback. And honestly, a lot of the information we've gotten at some of those run clubs has been really informative in how we create and design products.
Nice.
So we love those experiences. We love, that's where it happens. It doesn't really happen in this office. Almost everything meaningful happens outside of here. So we try to get out as much as we can.
There's a great, you may know about this already, I don't know. And I don't know how much you guys have pushed into the triathlon world, but to me, I consider myself a triathlete. This would be a great shoe because it's that ton of that ground feel. And anyway, moving on. There's at Walden Pond. I can tell you this because I accidentally ran into this group one morning. I have some relatives that live in Hingham, so I went up to Walden Pond to do a swim. This is several years ago. And there's a triathlon group that jumps in there and does kind of like a whole entire brick session, does a swim, bike, and run. Just saying. It's pretty cool to go and swim in Walden Pond. It's creepy when there's no sun on it. It's very, very dark.
Yeah.
And this, just so everybody who's watching right now can see, this is the Fli-lite that I'm holding up in the camera that you can see right there. This is the Fli-lite. Great shoe.
I love that shoe. That shoe, one other kind of just little special feature of that shoe, comes with 2 laces in the box, as you may know. So
the gray and
the shoe you're holding, for example, if somebody doesn't like that mango colored lace, it comes with the black lace, and they can relace it with that instead. So just a nice little extra feature or when the mango lace wears out, you got another shoelace already in the box.
There you go. Or if you're in a pinch, you could rappel out of a jailhouse window with your extra laces. You never know, man.
You just never know when those are going to come in handy.
Things happen. If you have a really large wound, you could stitch it shut with an extra shoelace. So what is next? And again, you showed us these earlier, and we talked about before. I'm just going to kind of let everybody a little behind the scenes. You said before we started recording that there are a couple things that you may want to show but may not want to show, and I don't want to ask you to show anything that you're not comfortable with, but what is next for Topo in terms of product development that you're comfortable talking about?
Yeah, no, we have a couple different things. So the product that I'm holding up here is a shoe that we have now called the Sante. This is a shoe that won the gold medal at ISPO. ISPO is the largest sporting goods show in the world. It takes place every year in Munich, Germany. And this product won the gold medal for performance footwear. So this is a shoe you can buy on our website today. It's a great shoe for functional fitness training. It's a shoe that I wear pretty regularly in the gym. Uses a BOA closure system. So people who haven't seen that before, that's a steel cable on the inside. So this shoe is available today, but for a lot of people who loved what this shoe represented, but maybe the BOA was a little too out there for them, we have a new shoe that will be coming. Sorry, this one's a little beat up and used because I used it today in the gym. So this is called the Hulsa. So this is a new Thai version of that shoe. This will be coming out next month. One of the cool features on this particular shoe is that it has a sole, and I'll use a different version if I have it here. Well, The sole is actually co-molded. So the rubber and the EVA, rather than molding independently and then gluing them together, right, they're molded in the same mold, which just gives this a lot more flexibility on the inside of the shoe. You know, it just moves and flexes easier with the foot. So that's a really cool feature of this particular product. Has the Velcro strap up over the instep, which makes it super strong and secure when you're doing any kind of lifting or lateral exercises. That's a nice feature. It's got a very durable, rugged mesh. All these features, and yet this is a shoe that still weighs less than 9 ounces.
Nice.
So that's an interesting new shoe. I showed you the a new super lightweight shoe that's coming. This will be probably my summer racing shoe this year. I'm really excited to have this. This is called the Tribute. Has that very breathable open mesh up on the inside that I tried to show before. And I wish you can't appreciate this shoe unless you can put it in your hand and feel how light it is. But you know, it still has rubber on the bottom, as you can see here. So you've got abrasion resistance and slip resistance. Still has that great Topo fit, so roomy up in the toes, but snug through the waist. And then for a lot of people who've been asking for something just a little bit more than what the Fli-lite has, right, in terms of cushioning, we'll be introducing this shoe for both men and women. All of the shoes I've been showing you here are kind of just off of my desk. These are men's shoes, but this shoe is called the Magna Fly. So this is, you have the Fli-lite that you were showing. This is the Magna Fly. This, you can see, has a new 2-density midsole, and it's really the way these different foams work together that delivers a really nice ride. This has 5 millimeters of drop, which is the most heel-to-toe drop we've put into a shoe. But it still feels, because of the way we integrate these foams, it still gives a really responsive, great feel. Just has a little more cushioning and protection. Still has that great fit that we described before, so lots of room for the toes to spread and splay. Very flexible in the bottom, so that, yeah, so it's just a shoe that I think a lot of people are looking forward to. And again, that's a shoe that, you know, weighs probably 8.8 ounces, something like that. Yeah. So very lightweight shoe, comfortable. So those are just a few of the things that are coming. Sorry I didn't have any women's shoes here on my desk. Those same models are available for women in some great colors, and we often get compliments on our colors for women's shoes.
Yeah, I really like, well, the colors for the men's shoes too. I mean, you have something like the MT, which is much more subtle, but with the Run Venture and even the Fli-lite, I mean, I really love it. It's kind of like this almost, you know, subtle color, but then with nice big pops. I really like that a lot. It's really nice. So the Halsa, the lace version of the Sante that you just showed us a moment ago, that shoe has, you know, as you mentioned, the midsole and the outsole are built together. And I'm wondering if that's kind of like in-mold construction with like a bike helmet, where the shell and then the actual padding are, instead of being built and then glued together, they're built together, and it saves on weight. It saves on durability and strength. Is that kind of a similar construction?
Yeah, it is. This is probably an easier version of that sole to see. So this is that same sole, but it's easier to see here with the contrast. So the challenge is, because EVA and rubber have different expansion rates in a mold, so it's a chemistry challenge to figure out how you can mold them in the same mold and get it to work so that you get a good bond between the two materials. But at the end of the day, if you can achieve that, you get something that's really flexible, as you said. So you've got, you know, this great flexibility, great durability, still have lots of abrasion resistance, but it's just got a lot more feel, more of a natural feel. Yeah. And I think for functional fitness training, you know, CrossFit athletes like shoes that give them more of a, probably a little bit more of a barefoot-like feel.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. Have you seen any of those shoes? I know this is an extremely important question. Have you seen any Topos on American Ninja Warrior?
Oh yeah.
Yeah? That's awesome.
Yeah, we have had a couple of them on. So we've, I mean, I don't remember the names of the competitors. Our marketing director is, and I think some of these shoes were actually purchased. It's not like we seeded shoes or gave them to people, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but we were just surprised to find people had discovered the shoes and used them.
Yeah, well, when you find something you like you said, stick with it, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, are there any races or anything in your future over the next few months? You just kind of doing your thing?
I want to get fit for some shorter races. I'd love
Hmm.
to do some shorter, faster races. Over the years, I find that I have kind of graduated to these longer, slow races, and it's fun. It's a fun challenge for me to try to do some things that are a little quicker, and you have to prepare for them a little more. So, building a base still right now, like a lot of people, and then as the weather gets a little better, I'll start to do some intervals or some more speed work and start to get out so that I can see if I can get my legs to turn. So there's a fun race that we do in the spring that's actually a 1 mile track race.
Oh,
So,
nice.
last year was the first mile that I had probably run in 30 years, 1 mile track race. So that was kind of a fun thing. So I'm going to do that again.
That's
And then
awesome.
some, shorter, faster races. There's some 5 miles and 10Ks that are coming up, just local races here. We have a great, great community for local road races.
Gotcha. You still aiming for that? You're gonna go back to the glory days of the sub 15 minute 5,000 meters?
Those days are long, long gone.
Come on, you can do it in your
Like,
car.
I like doing 2 miles in 15 minutes
There
now.
you
That's
go.
probably more appropriate.
That's way more appropriate for me. Believe me. You could always drive. You know,
Yeah.
you
No,
could,
gotta do it on your own human power.
right there. You go. Well, Flintstone it. Just get a Flintstone car. Put some topos on. I know a guy. You can get some topos from him. Well, Tony, I have to say, again, when I got a chance to meet you this a while ago, when the MT and the ST were coming out and everything like that, as I mentioned at the top, I was really struck by you're not coming at this as just let's build a product and that's that, and I'm here to run the business and that's that. It's very much, coming at it from wanting to build something that is a shoe that's complementary to the body, and not just complementary to the body, but complementary to the way that a body moves in space on Earth. And it's not. I've seen in the past, and I'm sure you have as well, companies that are coming in. This is not just exclusive to running shoes, of course, but running shoes, since we're talking about that medium, is where we'll talk about now. People that are coming in, brands that are coming in going, this is what your body needs to do. So here's a shoe to make sure your body does this thing. And I really appreciate you going, look, this is what your body does. Now let's see if we can build a shoe that's durable, that's lightweight, that's good looking, that's going to complement that top to bottom. I mean, it's just a really great approach, and super kudos on that. Really, really.
Yeah, it's a team effort, and I would say the biggest thing is we're always learning.
Yeah.
So, even if you've been at it for 30 years the way I have, or we have some people that are newer here too, the thing is to get out and learn, talk to people, listen to what people have to say when they use your product, hear what they have to say, what they love about other people's product, and keep finding ways to make the experience better, so that everybody can enjoy it more, enjoy it longer.
So if people want to check out Topo, you can go to topoathletic.com. You guys are on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and on YouTube,
That's right.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Just
that's
go all
correct.
those places and search for Topo Athletic, Topo. And where are you guys in terms of specialty retail?
You can always find us we're in a variety of run specialty and outdoor specialty stores around the country. We're in several Fleet Feet stores.
Mm-hmm.
You can find us on rei.com, and then several of the REI stores. But I would say go to your local specialty retail store, the one that's informed, and you're most likely to find Topo there. If it's not there, ask them if they're going to be carrying Topo.
There you go. I like that. Way to go. Do some selling for Topo. I want to thank you so much. We're going to wrap up the show right now, but you guys, if you're listening to this, your first time checking out the show, please don't forget to visit topoathletic.com, and don't forget to subscribe to the Gearist Podcast in iTunes or on YouTube if you're watching us there on YouTube, and as well, check out Topo on YouTube since you're already here. Come on, you want to do it. So, Tony, thank you so very much for taking the time today. It's been really great getting insight, seeing new products that I'm excited about. I mean, I'm excited about the Run Venture and the Fli-lite, man. These shoes are
Those are two great shoes.
They really are.
Really fun.
I mean, I can't wait to get just because I've been limited by I've had the Run Venture on one pretty hardcore. This place called Rabbit Mountain here, which is actually an interesting topographic thing because it sits on a different tectonic plate from the rest of the Front Range. So some millions of years ago, it got shifted several miles east. So it's kind of like a mountain that just sits there. Anyway, good trails up there, and this thing performed like a beast up there, and then it dumped snow. So I have not been up since. But anyway, thank you so very much for taking the time to come on today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for your interest, and thanks for having us, Brandon. Happy to be here.
All right.